Back again with another watercolor piece. Let's dive right on in. Okay, this was a really sort of soothing video for me to do. It was really interesting in terms of colors and exploration, so I can't wait to talk about it with you. But first, we gotta go over the materials that I used. So the paper is the Strathmore 400 series watercolor paper. I'm using my Reeves watercolors and some Winsor and Newton black ink, my Princeton brushes and Grumbacher brush, and a couple Prismacolor colored pencils. I think they're Prismacolor Scholar, to be more specific. Okay, now we get to talk about the artwork. Yay! You will notice that this piece is very much focused on the environment. Is a character included in this piece, but it's barely there. It's just a tiny little element of a bunch of elements, and it was really exciting to work with that idea. I've recently been focusing on environments, because since I really started doing art and focusing on getting better, I've focused on characters and being able to, accurately draw a human face or a human body and design clothing and that sort of stuff. But there's more to art than that, and I feel like I've definitely not mastered any of those things, but I've gotten to a level where it needs to be combined with more elements and a wider scope, really. So I want to be able to accurately draw and make up environments that I can, combine with characters to make more of a story with my art, rather than just it being a character and you not really understanding what's going on, what's the feeling, what sort of emotion is going on, what do the colors show you, how does it feel. So there's a lot more that I can incorporate with the help of environments, and that's really exciting to me. Yes. One of the major problems with doing and making up environments is that I have no experience with inventing landscapes or any kind of environment, or like a city or something. I just have no idea where to start, how to come up with an idea, or anything. So I end up feeling majorly blocked, and like I have no idea where to start, no inspiration, because I don't have any basis for one, and I'm just totally stuck at the beginning, and that makes it difficult. So what I did for this piece was I decided to come up with a color scheme, and I would see if I could come up with a totally new environment based on a color scheme that, sort of would inspire something. Hopefully, that was the hope anyway. So I got online and found a random color palette generator, and I generated a color palette. It was sort of this pinkish color, two blues, a peach color, and a sort of toned down gray. And those are all the colors. I allowed myself, kind of freedom. It wasn't supposed to be rigid structure. that I had to stick to exactly those colors. It was just supposed to be a way to inspire something and get my mind going, where it had been totally stuck before. So it did work. I got out my sketchbook, mixed those colors on my palette, and tried to figure out what they sort of made me think of. And, since I had two different blues, I thought of like a valley with a river in it, and then a blue sky. And I love the vibe that this piece ended up having. It feels, um, I don't know, it's just really bright, but also kind of feels like dusk, and it really, I love the way that it sort of feels. It has a really awesome feeling, and sort of character, even though the character um, isn't the main part. You still feel like this piece has its own personality with those colors, and I just love that. It felt really successful and like an awesome accomplishment to me. So I was really happy with how that part was going, and that I was able to come up with something because I limited the colors. Because before that, it was sort of like any colors could go, and there was just so much possibility. I needed to limit my imagination to some extent so that I could actually have an idea that I could put down on paper. So I highly recommend, finding some way that, you can restrict your mind a little bit so that you can have more success in actually figuring out what to draw. That did help me a whole bunch, and I will definitely be using this in the future, not just for environments, but when I'm stuck in any capacity in my art anyway. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk about was the textures that I used in this piece. I was trying to be very intentional with the textures that I used, because I know that textures can be a very useful tool in art, but I find that my art often ends up extremely smooth. That's just sort of what I've been drawn to, and it's easier when you don't have to think about your textures, so you just flatten everything out, make it a smooth transition color-wise, and you don't have to worry about like what the texture is. But I know that it kind of looks awkward, and it definitely doesn't look realistic in the ways that I want it to be. Obviously, I'm not a realism artist, but there are times and places where I want it to feel a little bit more real, and like it's possible in the real world, and having it so smooth does not give that feeling. It really distracts, I feel like, from what I am trying to show you when it is that completely smooth look. So I was intentional with the texture. I added texture with the watercolor. Definitely, you can see it in the mountain. I didn't totally smooth out the wash of the sky. I also kept the water very textured and sort of, you can see where the brush strokes were, and like I had mixing on the page to, keep it from being entirely smooth. And then I also went back in after all of it was dry with colored pencils to add more texture, but also add a little bit of definition in places that needed it, but my main focus with the colored pencil was to add texture. So it wasn't totally smooth, and I think it worked perfectly, exactly how I wanted it to. This was such a fun piece to work on, and I feel like I explored a lot more than I knew I was going to when I started it, but it felt very free. I didn't have a lot of expectations, I was just experimenting, and that's really my favorite kind of art, when that happens, when, you know, you're not pressuring yourself to make something exact and perfect. It's just sort of a free-form thing that you add elements when you feel like they need to be added, experiment with shapes and textures and colors and trying a new thing. So it was awesome, and I think that this is definitely one of my favorite pieces. Small little exercise piece, really, but I really loved it a lot. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, and until next time, live life respectfully. Bye.